pantomime there at the end of the First Leader's questions.
Taoiseach,
I want to focus on an issue that's important to the Labour Party. That's Garda resources and Garda recruitment. Specifically, I want to raise with you the lack of new Garda stations and your continued lack of meeting Garda recruitment figures. According to a parliamentary question I submitted earlier this year, since 2017, only 2 new Garda stations, according to the PQ reply, have been delivered in this country, despite the population increasing by nearly 1 million citizens. One of those stations is in O'Connell Street in the centre of Dublin. The other was actually a replacement of the divisional HQ in Wexford. So only 1 new Garda station in 8 years, Taoiseach. Simply unacceptable. In my own town of Swords, the 3rd largest town in Ireland, we have a Garda station that's only fit for a village. With the town of Donabate just up the road, which is served by Swords Garda station and will be 20,000 people strong in a couple of years, has no Garda station nor no plans for a Garda station. This is not unusual throughout the country. Myself and my colleagues are screaming out for more resources throughout the country, particularly rural Ireland, where we're being gaslit by the Minister in terms of Garda resources. In a response earlier this year, the Justice Minister said that 56 stations in this country weren't closed, they were simply unstaffed. That is absolute nonsense. If the door isn't open and if there are no opening hours for the people to go in and meet and talk with guards, that station is in effect closed. Here is the reality, Taoiseach. Figures show that 129 of 567 stations had a reduction in the number of guards assigned to them in the last year, and 1 in 10 stations are without any designated Garda. Overall numbers in a Garda Síochána have actually grown by a paltry increase of 193. However, if you dig into the detail, the number of frontline Gardaí has actually decreased from just over 12,000 to 11,928, a net decrease. Warning lights are being flashed for your government. At their conference this year, the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors stated that we could lose 30 to 50% of our force due to upcoming retirements. Fine Gael have always identified themselves as the party of law and order, yet your party have stood over this lack of delivery for nearly a decade. Taoiseach, you yourself were one of the ministers responsible for this portfolio, lest we forget. This situation is now beyond urgent, and we need to see this government make big changes to ensure greater recruitment and retention of Gardaí and investment in Garda stations. The government need to be looking at increasing the training allowance, and they need to be looking at pension reform, and they need to be looking at building more stations. So, Taoiseach, I have 3 questions. Will you increase the Garda training allowance to really incentivise new recruits? Will you reform the pension for our uniformed service members, including our Gardaí who were hired post-2013, who upon their retirement will receive no support for the state for possibly 10 years? And will this government commit to significantly increasing the number of new Garda stations being built around the country, prioritising large towns that have unfit for purpose stations, such as my own town of Swords, and for really rapidly growing towns such as Donabate and many others throughout the country?
Thanks very much, Deputy Smith. And I suppose at the outset, I agree with you that we obviously need to get more Gardaí on our streets, and we need to recruit and train more Gardaí, and you've made some suggestions as to how you think that can be done, and I'll come back to that in a moment. I do need to make, I suppose, a few points in relation to the level of investment we're now making in the Garda budget to empower the Garda Commissioner and the Garda authorities in terms of increasing the numbers. So we have a Garda budget of 2.59 billion for next year, and this will fund recruitment of up to 1,000 new Gardaí, 200 more Garda staff, and also a doubling of the Garda Reserve to over 600 next year. We have run 2 Garda recruitment campaigns this year in 2025, and we have seen over 11,000 applications to join on Garda Síochána received this year. There is genuinely a sense, and when I talk to the Minister, when you talk to Garda authorities, you probably see this yourself, there is genuinely a sense that there's some momentum now in terms of the number of people going into Templemore, though I do admit it's been a challenging number of years. We saw, for example, 194 Gardaí attested last week, and this brings the total number of newly attested Gardaí so far to 617 this year. We saw 223 trainees enter Templemore in the last couple of weeks as well, and this was the largest intake in Templemore since 2014, so the largest intake in 11 years, and we've now seen 794 trainees into Templemore so far this year, which is the largest since 2018. So, larger attestations, largest training classes going in, largest number of people overall training in Templemore in many years as well. As of October this year, which is the latest figure for which there are numbers available, there's a total of 14,290 290 Gardaí across the state. And just for comparison, 2015 there were 12,816. There's now 3,487 Garda staff, which obviously helps free up Gardaí to put them on frontline duties as well. You've asked specifically in relation to the Garda training allowance and in relation to the pension. And I hear these issues too. I was in a Coolock Garda station not too long ago, last year as well, and I heard this discussion as well. This does come up in discussions. I do need to say all of these matters are matters for discussions and engagements through normal processes, through public pay processes and the likes, rather than for me to give loose commitments on the floor of the Dáil. Specifically on the third point, though, in relation to Garda Capital, I know the Minister for Justice had approval at Cabinet this week for the Garda sectoral plan, for the sectoral investment plan in justice, and that will see a significant increase in the number of Garda stations being constructed in the time ahead. And I'm conscious of the point you make, and I will talk to Minister O'Callaghan in relation to this, particularly of very fast-growing populations around Swords and Donabate and the likes, and the particular need for additional infrastructure there, and I'll ask the Minister to come back on that.
Smith.
The capital plan that's been drafted up from the Guards doesn't seem to be rooted in the reality of how towns are growing. I know my colleague Conor Sheehan, we talked about the Garda station and the Garda needs in Castle Troy, and every member in this House will say the same. So there needs to be a commitment to the reality. And you know, I didn't mention investment because we've had no shortage of money. It's delivery. And there's been some creativity in terms of how the figures in terms of recruits into Templemore have been published over the last couple of years, with recruitment classes starting very, very late in the year when in essence they were beginning the following year. All this has been revealed through parliamentary questions from our Justice spokesperson Alan Kelly and other members in our party. But fundamentally, two things are happening here. We're not recruiting enough guards or attracting enough guards, and as a result our communities and the people aren't feeling safe or aren't feeling protected. That is a real problem. It's a real issue that your government has not gotten a handle on, despite the amount of money we have in the coffers. So I ask you again, can you properly recommit to a training fund? Can you properly recommit to pension reform? And can you prioritise those towns and villages all over this country that need proper Garda resources invested in their communities?
Well, thanks. Look, I acknowledge the point you make, and I don't want to jump over it, that it's not now an issue of a shortage of money. It used to be. It is an issue now where we're actually able to invest properly. But that also means that we do need to look at the processes. If you have 11,000 people putting up their hand and saying, I want to join on Garda Síochána, the Minister for Justice is very eager to make sure, as is the Garda Commissioner, that the pipeline, if you like, is as efficient as possible in taking an expression of interest to join in Garda Síochána, robustly vetting and training that individual, and then having them on the streets, serving the people of this country and keeping people safe as well. There are some signs of positivity in terms of Garda recruitment at the moment, albeit admitting that with the closure of the college twice during COVID and the financial crash, there was a lost period of time there, and that did cause significant disruption. We've also made changes around issues regarding the recruitment age, the maximum age at which you can join on Garda Síochána, retirement ages as well, and we've seen some positive effects from that too. I'll take the point you make back to the Minister for his conversations with the Garda Commissioner about matching investment in Garda stations and population growth. I think it's not an unfair point, because there are lots of parts of this country growing much more quickly than other parts as well, and the other options and other issues in relation to how you could improve incentivisation in terms of recruitment and retention are matters for the normal engagement at industrial relations level.